right, good morning. Last day, RSA. Everyone feeling good? Feeling good? I love the theme this year, right? The art of the possible. It feels dramatic, it feels very strong. I'm like, yes, the art of the possible. But the past couple days, and it'll be interesting to see if you guys feel the same way about this. Past couple days, about halfway through any talk, I start to feel a twitch. I'm like, would my folks do that? I don't know. And I look around and I'll see the same look. That sort of like hardened stare, right? Like that 10,000 yard, like, I've seen things you wouldn't believe. You think my developers would do that? You think my IT people would really use that? I love what you're saying, but how would I convince my workforce to do what you're talking about? Right? What is possible is so oftentimes limited by what we can actually get people to do. And so in the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to try and chip away at that a little bit. I'm going to talk about human factors. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways that hopefully we can get some things done. Last day of the conference, and we're not going to have a clicker. Oh, there we go. Just push hard. All right, step one for working with people, push hard. My name is Wolfgang Gorlick. I've got a history of leading IT and IT security in healthcare and financial services. I'm just done with a run with a product company focusing on zero trust, the human factor side of zero trust predominantly. And if you were to go to my blog or read me or talk to me 15 years ago, I was very much into the technology. You would have heard me say things like, good security is just good IT, right? Or good security is just clean code. Because I knew if I could spend some time with a server and app, I could harden it, I could patch it, I could put in SQLi protection, I could stop the bad guys. And then I walked away, and then it got turned off, security got rolled back, vulnerabilities got introduced, and it was very frustrating. Entropy set in. And so I entered this process phase, my 20 teens. I was up here at RSA, maturity models and process models and frameworks, and it's all about policies and awareness. And I was all excited. And I got people to start programs. And I walked away, and entropy set in. So you are joining me at what I think of my people era, right? This is where I've really been focusing on human factors and human design. It is not as exciting as when people say, this is my villain era. I wish it was. That sounds so much sexier, but I like people, so. But speaking of villains, I want to introduce you to the world's most boring superhero. The most boring superhero I've ever learned. You guys all know Spider-Man and Superman. We all know those. Wonder Woman. How many of you guys here have heard of the economic man? Right? Able to buy things in a single bound. For those of you who don't know, the 20th century economic theory was based on this idea of economic man, called Homo economicus, because if it's Latin, it sounds cooler. They were able to figure out how much to spend, where to buy, they had perfect information, they made perfect decisions. Yes, all wrong. I heard you, spoiler alert, all wrong. The past decade or two has all been overturning this. This is where books like Nudge come into place, right? Where it's wait a minute, that's not how people behave. Why are we pricing, building economic models, everything around that? I would like you to consider that in the past 2 decades, we in our field, maybe longer, have created the cybersecurity man, right? With the shield, with security incorrectly spelled, thank you AI. By the way, AI is going to revolutionize everything. I don't know if you guys heard. It's a thing. But here's the thing about cybersecurity man. The nearest I can figure, we've been saying this forever, but the nearest I can figure, the first cited resource of the phrase, the weakest link, people are our weakest link, was in 2000, Bruce Schneier, Secrets and Lies. I'm sure people have said it earlier. If you guys have an earlier citation, I'll add it. But this is RSA, so I get to poke fun at Bruce. It feels right. For at least 24 years, we've been talking about the security man. Here's what I believe the security man is. It is the weakest link. They're not dumb, but they're just not smart, right? And we just need them to slow down and think. How many of you have heard someone in your organization say, if only I could get people to slow down and think, right? Totally ignoring system 1, system 2 thinking, by the way. Totally ignoring how the cognitive mind works, by the way. But yeah, if we could just get them to slow down and think. Once we win them over, we give them some awareness training, we give them a trinket, we take them out to drinks, they love us, we fist bump, they're in, they're committed, and they stay committed. And they do what they say, and they say what they do, and if they don't, we can shame them. We can make them feel bad, and they'll get back on the right path. There's probably some more tropes about the security man, the homo securitas, because again, Latin sounds good, right? But these are the ones that I want to really poke a hole at. And I want to drive home how incorrect this is, but more importantly, how not taking a moment to figure out how people actually work, to communicate in the way they actually communicate, to build systems in the way they actually think, is hindering and holding back our security programs across the board, certainly in GRC, but across the board. Let's start with the human condition. People are fun, right? Right? They're a riot. It's all we have. It's the people on the front lines. We're going to equip them, and they're going to go forward, and they're going to secure everything. And we've got a great series of frameworks for this. We've got a great way of communicating risk for this. And if you want to, by the way, see how this plays out, see how the biases in people play out. Anyone find the whole bear versus man thing that's having a moment right now? Yes, bear versus man. Which would you rather be alone with? When people argue about that, what are they arguing? They're arguing salience bias. What's the first bad image that comes to my mind? One. They're arguing likelihood. I had a bad image and I looked it up, and my likelihood proves that it's more likely than your likelihood. Or they're arguing impact. Yeah, but your likelihood proves it's more likely than my likelihood, but a bear is scary and has claws and is heavy and will rip you apart, right? And no one can really truly seem to agree yet, bear versus man. I'm not going to weigh in. It doesn't matter. The point is, when it comes to risk management, this is like a great encapsulation about any sort of risk we try to talk anyone into doing. We start with this idea that risk management is beautiful. It has a beginning. We're going to be on the same page. We're going to do an assessment. We're going to do a gap assessment. We're going to figure out where you're strong and where you're weak. We're going to have conversations with those control owners. We're going to say, here's what you need to do. They're going to do it. Life is going to be good. Never have I seen it happen that way, ever, 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 except for in textbooks. And it all starts with that beginning, right? That beginning part of the risk appetite. What is your risk appetite? That's what we need to ask, right? That's where we start, so our controls are right. I love that question, by the way. What is your risk appetite? If you ask the CEO, it's high, as we all know. Business is in the business of big bets. CFO will give you a dollar value. May say something like EBITDA, sounds great, sounds fancy. 10 million, bah, okay. The CIO is gonna be like, no, don't you touch a damn thing, I got SLAs, low. Which all gets to what the CISO's, I think, real risk appetite is. Bourbon. Bourbon, yeah, I don't know about you. This is why we drink. Because how do you come up with any sort of risk strategy after that, right? And it varies by when you ask. It varies also. What's interesting is who's asking. If it's a consultant versus an internal person, you get two different answers. The science of risk shows if they like you more, they will take more risks with you. So, next time someone's like, I'm doing all the risky things with you, you're like, oh, wow, they really love me. That's awesome. But who's asking changes this, which is fascinating to me. When you're asked changes this. And so often when we figure out risk appetite, we figure out how we're trying to communicate things. I should add, by the way, I do advisory work, I do executive coaching. CISOs and security leaders will come to me, and especially young ones, and they'll ask me things like, what metrics do I need? And you teach me what metrics. Or, hey, what chart should I use for a board presentation? Or, I'm trying to convince my peers to patch or to remediate or to burn down these controls. What prioritization formula should I use? Do I need a fair? Do I need Monte Carlo? And I'm like, yes, you need bourbon. You need to go to a casino. You'll be fine. Because none of that's right, right? It's fascinating. Who you ask changes it. Who you're talking to changes it. The relationships change it. Underlying all that, I believe, is the relationships that the people have with the person who's asking. I think it's much easier for an executive to say, I don't trust your data, than it is to say, I don't trust you. I think it's and this is so much easier, for your partner in IT to be like, I can't remediate any of that until you prioritize it with good data, than for them to say, I'm not doing any of that. No way, right? So what do we hear? We hear it's got to be data, it's got to be data, it's got to be data. So we focus on the data, we focus on the data, we focus on the data. Speaking of data, in my last role, we did a series of reports with Scientia, right? Great analyst firm. They looked at 5,000 folks, 20, 30 countries. It was an annual study. Consistent finding, year after year, capability after capability. Disaster recovery, business continuity, endpoint security, zero trust, right? You name it. If they said that capability was mature, they were more than twice as likely to report they had good relationships with their executives, good relationships with their peers, good relationships with their directs. More than twice as likely to have good relationships. Why? Because relationships drive so much of the human condition. And yet oftentimes we focus so much on the metrics and the charts. In terms of risk appetite, we need to use like a risk menu, not survey people. What does that look like? Here are 10 scenarios that I care about. Back to, yes, with good data. I'm not saying don't do good data. But here's 10 scenarios the GRC program has identified that could happen, real risks that we want to remediate, 10 stories we want to tell. Which of these matter to you? Which of these are most concerned to you right now? Much easier to get consensus, much easier to get buy-in on. And of course, reduce the ambiguity around what we're going to do about those. I'll come back to ambiguity in a minute. The key thing here is relationships first. Second is what's in it for them. One of the things that I'm constantly driving home is we need to make important things interesting and interesting things important in security. This is like the crux of the matter when it comes to relationships. It's the crux of the matter when it comes to driving security programs. How do we make the important things interesting? I'll give you 2 ideas, 2 examples. One bad, one good. Let's go with the good one first. So I was talking to a security leader a few weeks back. Copilot's having a moment, AI's having a moment, right? So M365 rolls out Copilot. And all his executives, all his team is like, when are we going to do Copilot? When are we going to do Copilot? He's like, Wolf, this is, I know they want to do Copilot, but that's not my problem right now. My problem is my data program. Getting data governance set up, doing DLP, tagging, the whole 9 yards. I was like, well, then that's easy. He goes, what do you mean that's easy? You know, just make it important. He goes, here's a way that I would position that. I said, yeah, I want to do Copilot. Copilot's awesome. You know what all these Gen AIs are based on? They're based on good data. You know that data governance program? The reason I want to do that is so that we can get good data into Copilot. Also, anything you're scared about on this lovely risk menu around Copilot is usually the fact that it's exposing the wrong data to the wrong people. That's why we're prioritizing my data program. A few days goes by, he gets a text, he goes, guess what? I'm like, what? He goes, my data program's running. I'm like, yes, right? Make it interesting, make it interesting. Give you an example, I think this actually went off the rails. Okta had a breach last year, a few of them, and the CEO in a meeting asked the CISO, like, what about this Okta breach? Like, what is our exposure? And the CISO was telling me later, he's like, I almost laughed. I'm like, we don't use Okta. We don't have to worry about that. I'm like, well, did you take what he was interested about, though, and make it important? Because what do you mean? I said, well, for example, what do you want? He's like, well, I want things like buy-in and support for the things. I don't need money. I don't need people right now. I just need some support. I'm like, all right, so tell me what that looks like. And he goes, well, I did this, I did that. I go, okay, here's how I would have perhaps said this. Oh, yeah, Okta had a breach. Cloud identity providers we're concerned about, which is why, as you may recall, we had strategic investments in authentication, MFA, and detect and respond, ITDR. So we're on top of that, which is why your continued support for those is so important. But we don't have Okta, so we don't have to worry about it today, but we may very well need to worry about it tomorrow. It's like, oh, I should have said that. I'm like, yeah, next time you get a chance, right? They're already interested in it. How can we use that and drive it forward? It's all about leveling and working with the people. So let's talk about cognitive biases, all the different ways that we get things right and wrong. One of the things that I think we're doing is effectively running 20 years of technology and 20,000 years of legacy. All right? Legacy being us, of course. We love our stories. We don't necessarily want to do statistics and math. We can't remember too many things. About 7 is what they say. We can't know too many people. There's around 100 to 150 relationships we can maintain in our lives, according to science. Strange things happen in our brains. Strange things happen in our brains that allow us or cause us to make different decisions. I'll give you an example. Let's talk back to risk, right? Let's say we're presenting a finding. I'm going to give you 2 risks, 2 ways of presenting this finding. And I'm going to ask you to raise your hand and weigh in. First way, it's a medium risk. We need to do something about it. Pay attention to how that hits you. Second way, this risk is 8.375 on our scale. Who thinks medium risk sounded more informed and intelligent? 8.375. Something really weird happens. We love, like everyone's like, stop the binary. People love binary. Like 2 things, we're excited. Like I got 2 hands, I can hold them. It's great. 3 things are really exciting. I got 2 hands and 1 that I don't know what to do with. It's even more exciting. Jokes, 3 setups, right? Always, always. We love our 2s, we love our 3s. We can do 4, and by the time you get more than 4, you pass out of the primitive mammal part of the brain that counts. And you pass into the cognitive brain that processes numbers. If you look at an MRI and you say medium risk, and then you say 8.75, 2 different parts of the brain light up. Could be the exact same. You could randomly select a number between 7 and 9 for your medium risks, and people would respond differently than that. Isn't that wild? Totally crazy, totally crazy. All the cognitive biases that we're bringing along with us change so much of how we do communication, so much of how we navigate the world, and oftentimes are completely overlooked. Which is why, like, the art of communication, as many of you have heard, as many people know, this is not a me quote, rather. Not what we say, it's what we hear, right? Was it a mid-level risk or 8.75? Was it something that is interesting to me, or are you just blabbling on around MFA and ITDR, and I don't even know what those acronyms mean? Not what we say, it's what we hear. Yet, so oftentimes we forget that, and we're like, we just need to say the right thing. If I could just say the right thing, I would get the money and the budget, and everything would be great. Awesome. Never going to happen. What affects what people hear? The relationships. Again, this is a continuing theme. Anchoring, if we start off with talking about cloud and then talk about cloud risks, they're going to be more receptive to cloud risks. If we talk about on-prem and then bring up legacy, they'll be more concerned about legacy risks. Do we have resources? If you can't do anything about it, they're not listening anyways, they're going to start ignoring you. All sorts of things drive the way we listen to these things. So what do we do about it? We make these risk scenarios salient and specific. Salient means I can think about it, I can picture it, I have recent examples. That's why headlines work, right? I think we all hate headlines in security communities because every talk comes up with here's the 50 headlines, followed quickly by the line, you could probably repeat it by now in your sleep, never before has security been so difficult, right? You're like, come on, I've been doing this for 30 years. The headlines change. Right now it's SolarWinds. It used to be Target. Okay, right? But storytelling in a professional setting is so incredibly powerful. If we can tell something in a professional setting that ties to a risk, that has some statistics, that has a recent example, it's going to be salient, it's going to be specific, they're going to be in. If we say we're just managing risk, they're going to be great. I don't know what that means, but I'm paying you and I'm sure it's good. Keep paying me, it is good. But you're like, oh, the risk of phishing off of this particular way, which is driving this amount of fraud, and by the way, just down the street, another bank just like ours got popped. Suddenly you have their attention. Reducing ambiguity. Fun fact, no one's going to find this fun probably, but in 2022, my New Year's resolution I was actually able to keep for a full year, which almost never happens, right? New Year's resolution's incredibly hard to keep. I kept mine for a full year. I was not going to say the phrase, it depends. I was not going to say it depends. In September, I was on a call, and someone asked me a question. I'm like, well, you see it. He's like, are you going to say it depends? I'm like, no. He's like, oh, I'm going to trick you. I'm going to get you to give up. I'm like, no, you won't. because that's what I'm doing. Why? Because when I was looking at the research, people would, if it was ambiguous, they would either decide not to act or ignore it. Like they would rather have a career-ending injury. Studies will show that they would rather accept they have cancer, they would rather have terrible things happen to them than have ambiguity. It depends is like a conversation stop, right? So we need to figure out when we present these scenarios, what are we actually doing about it? How do we reduce the ambiguity? And then play with those biases to make sure that we're presenting in a good way. I will give a caution here. A bit of a cringe moment. Anyone ever look at back at old photos of them and like, ew, why was I doing that? Yeah? Anyone ever do that with PowerPoints? And preparing for this talk, I went back and looked at talks I'd given in the past. And around 15 years ago, I had a slide that said, social engineer your business for their own damn good. I'm sure that went over real well with the hacker audience. I winced. I'm like, I hope no one I ever worked for ever heard that, right? One of the things that I find when I have these conversations is people get too manipulative, they get too out there, and then the organization pushes them back and they get resistance. So make sure as you're doing these things that you're not social engineering. You do need to have a good relationship, right? It shouldn't be like, I have a good relationship with the CFO, I have coffee with him every 3 weeks so I can get budget. That's not a relationship, right? We need to actually be forming a human connection, leveraging that 20,000 years of legacy. In the deck, I've got everything that I'm talking about on each section slides if you want to pull down and research more. And you should, by the way, we got 50 minutes, right? This is not a lot. Please do dig into this. Please do reach out to me if you want to have conversations about this. I would love to. Okay, let's talk about risk. The human condition is one of ignoring risk. How do we process risk? One of the interesting things about risk is this idea of risk thermostat. Another related topic to that is, as a culture or organization, we have a risk equilibrium, or what I like to think of as a risk climate. To get to what those are, I'm going to tell you a story. I was a CISO in financial services firm, as already mentioned, and we had a great network. I love that network. It was secure, it was locked down, I had firewalls and segments and all sorts of things. Really was very pleased with how we eventually got it. Very few breaches. One of the security incidents I faced was malware spreading all over the place from the executive floor segment. Like, what the? Traced it down. It was one of the executives. He had brought in a laptop. It was his kid's laptop. It was a gamer laptop. It was a Windows XP laptop. Now dated this story. But he brought it in knowing it was infected, and he infected our network. I was pissed. And I asked him, why did you do this? Like, do you know how much time I put into making this pretty and nice? Why would you mess it up? And he said something to this day I don't know how to respond to. And this is the exact quote to which this executive said. He looked at me, he said, yes, I knew it was infected. So I brought it into work. He goes, where else would I bring it? This is the most secure place I know. Thanks, I guess. The idea of a risk thermostat is the safer you feel, the more risks you take. The more unsafe you feel, the less risks you take. These risks, by the way, don't stay neatly in GRC buckets. If you have a bunch of layoffs, people are going to be very risk averse. Right? Right after bonus time, that's when you want to be taking your risks, because that's when people are feeling good. It's very strange when you ask, changes things. Risk thermostat is oftentimes used incorrectly, however, to avoid controls. You may have heard things like, oh, we can't possibly ask people to wear helmets on motorcycles. They'll drive like maniacs. Maybe they will. During the pandemic, the WHO held off on doing a mask mandate because they're concerned if they did a mask mandate, people would not shelter in place. Oftentimes I'll hear, well, why would I do a PAM solution? Won't that just make my IT people take more risks? It's all this sort of mentality. And to be fair, yes, if 100 people are driving a motorcycle, 2 of them are probably going to be crazier after a helmet law, right? If I roll out, If I roll out a PAM solution, maybe one or two IT admins are going to be like, woohoo, I can now do it. No, they're not. I mean, let's be fair. But yes, there is some pushback we need to be aware of. But this idea of risk thermostat is very interesting. Collectively, an organization has a risk climate, which is the collective average of all these. That's what we're effectively getting at when we talk about risk appetite. And if you change too much too fast, that risk equilibrium will absolutely push back on you. It's very fascinating how this plays out. Part of it is, how do we communicate if we are changing and asking them to do something and it's working, right? Have you ever thought about that? Like, as risk professionals, we are really screwed at how we communicate. We can have something like nothing happened, and you're like, hey, guess what? You spent a bunch of money, nothing bad happened. You're welcome, right? Or what's worse is, you had that risk scenario, and that risk scenario was absolutely correct, and you put all the controls in place, except for they stepped around a couple of your controls and got you anyways. And now you're like, yeah, the bad thing happened, but guess what? It would have been so much worse if you hadn't spent money. You know, you're welcome, right? How do we communicate these things? Or even worse, something bad happens, and it's not even on our risk register. We haven't even thought about it. It's completely new. It's a completely novel attack. And we're like, thank goodness you have me to fix it. Right? These are not good places to have communication. And by the way, this gets right back to the cybersecurity man, because what do we do as risk professionals? Is it the process that's wrong? No, it's the user, right? It's not me. It's those dang users who are not understanding the risk. It's very difficult to have these conversations. So what do we do about it? We figure out how we communicate risk and express risk in different ways. We teach risk like it's the CIA triad, like there's a number and an impact and everything. But people actually experience risk. This comes from Peter Sandman, by the way, one of my favorite risk communicators, not in cyber at all. Most of his work was in the 90s and early aughts. He posited risk was a function of hazard and outrage. Sort of like Bruce Schneider's feelings and reality of security, but I think outrage captures it more. Because think of the last time you had an incident. Like, let's imagine someone popped a vulnerability, and it was a low-risk vulnerability. What have we all done with our vuln programs? We prioritize them. We've got good data, right? We're patching the most critical things, which means what do the bad guys usually do? They go after the low things and chain those together. So your executives, what do they say? Do they go, you know, I'm so glad we have Wolf. He patched all the important things. This must not have been important. Or do they go, if you can't do the simple things, how the hell can we expect you to do the hard things? Right? Because they're outraged. Now let's even step outside of a vulnerability. The SEC tweet last year was such a great example of outrage. Does your social media accounts count as critical infrastructure? Not from a hazard perspective. People can say bad things all day long. They're not getting into our cloud environment, right? Nah. Were people absolutely outraged when the SEC was tweeting about Bitcoin because their account got compromised? You would be shocked at how many people reached out to me and be like, hey, how can I do multi-factor on shared accounts? And what about my marketing agencies? By the way, I have an answer for that, but that's not in this call or talk if you want to have this conversation. But people suddenly got excited about that because I need to take care of that. People are asking, which is good. Make the important things interesting. I would argue risk mitigation is a function of important and interesting. Important is to address the hazard. Interesting is accepting that outrage. You're absolutely right. We care about our social media accounts. Let's talk about password managers and multi-factor, right? Also, people are primed to respond to risk for a very short period of time. Either in the moment, because of 20,000 years of legacy, the monster is outside the cave. Are they still there? Doesn't look like it's biting me. I guess I'm fine. Maybe I'll invite the monster in, and that's how we get dogs. I don't know. Or over a period of time. We are terrible at risks that are multi-year or multi-generational. We're really, really good at things that are seasonal. Like, give me a good 6 weeks, and I'm great. I can solve all the things. I recently experienced this at a dinner party. Came out of New York a few weeks ago. Got terrible food poisoning. So as I'm in my bed dying, my wife's like, we have a dinner party tonight. 12 people are coming, and I've brought all this food. I'm like, yes, we'll have the dinner party. text them and let them know so they're aware of the risk. A couple people are like, yeah, that's fine. I don't really want to come. I sit in the corner. People start coming in. I wave at them. I've got the mask on. I'm in the corner. I don't eat. I don't touch anything. I join in the conversation. We have a lovely conversation. Build some good relationships. Build some good friendships. Reconnect. What happens at the end of that? People are hugging me. Did the risk change? In 2 hours, did I become like, he's clearly not effective? No. But human nature is like, the monster didn't bite me. Give me a hug. Right? It's great. So we really have to be careful when we introduce risks in terms of when we want to get things out of it. So reduce the ambiguity, but also communicate the ambiguity. Communicate where there are unknowns. Right now, I absolutely guarantee you, anyone, I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands, but I'm sure many of you guys are doing passwordless, right? Passwordless is all the rage. And people are like, we're selling passwordless because it'll end phishing. I absolutely guarantee you a bunch of security people are going to get in trouble because they said it will end phishing. And it does. It ends phishing one way. 6 other ways I can think of that will phish you. Probably 2 other that I don't know about that will be announced at a DEF CON coming soon to Vegas near you. You also want to communicate the ambiguity. Like, we're going to do this. We're not entirely sure about this part, but this is where we have certainty. So that you have the wiggle room when things do happen, and you're not like, well, I thought you fixed that. I fixed the part we knew about, but there's still unknowns. You want to introduce risks at the right time. One of the things I think a lot of GRC programs do wrong is we come up with a whole long list of things. And then we're like, oh, we will review these on a quarterly basis. Awesome. What happens 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters in? Risk hasn't happened yet. Why am I worried about it? Right? Like, but because it's still scary. It hasn't bit me yet. Maybe I should hug it. I don't know. So be very careful about the normalization of risk. And of course, again, be prepared for pushback, both personally in terms of reactance and organizationally in terms of resistance. That pushback side is another thing that I think too many GRC programs get wrong. Let's suppose for a minute we have 30 terribly important risks, and we're going to do a program to address them. And 10 of them are really high pushback. What do we do about those 10? Some of you are thinking, well, it depends on how important that risk is. Is it a critical thing? Is it a crown jewel? Right? That's where a lot of us are taught. That's where our head goes. I would argue you do the other 20 and get buy-in, get momentum, build relationships, build trust, and then suddenly that resistance will dissipate. Some of the best security leaders I know, some of the best GRC leaders I know, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis will be like, where am I getting pushback? And they'll pull their resources back. Where am I getting successes? They'll double down in those areas. And they'll surround and win. All right, let's talk about changes. So we've assessed the risk. We got people on the same page. We have 30 things we care about. We've got 5 of them done. We've got 10 of them people won't talk about. We're making good changes. What happens now? Now I get to talk about Wendy Nather. No, Wendy Nather's Cheeseburger Risk Management. I love this concept. This is the concept. Let's say John, our friend John, any Johns in the room, I'm sorry, it's my dad's name, so that's where my head goes. John has heart problems, but John's living life. He's loving life. He's out all night, drinking with his friends, having good food, eating cheeseburgers. Eventually this catches up to him. He has a heart attack, right? Hospitalization, emergency medical treatment, and he changes. There's a thing called the fresh start effect, right? New Year's resolutions, new projects, benefit from the fresh start effect. Life-changing things when you come out of the hospital, benefit from the fresh start effect. Suddenly you have tremendous willpower to change and to do things. And so he starts doing everything right. He starts exercising. He starts eating right. He stops going out late at night, gets more rest, he's healthy, his blood pressure comes down. How long does that last? 6 months? Maybe a year. Maybe a year. And then, well, maybe one cheeseburger isn't bad. Maybe one night out won't kill me. And before you know, you slip back into the old patterns. medical science, I did some research on this, proves this out, by the way. Like, this is one of the big things that hospitals have started to do is they'll have interjections at the 6-month mark to keep people going correctly. This is the exact same thing that happens at just about every single cybersecurity control when you think about it, right? We put it in. Everyone's excited. Everyone does the right thing for a few months till they forget about the breach, till the pain is no longer memorable. Yeah, of course that happened, but that happened so long ago. We don't need to worry about it. We're fine. And then bad habits creep back in. We talk about a security culture, but a security culture is based on cybersecurity man, right? It's consistent commitment. It's consistent behavior. It's unlimited capacity for change. They're not going to backslide. None of this actually happens in real life, as we all know. Everyone starts off with the best behavior. I love, by the way, audits. Audits are my favorite. Like, you audit a program, and whenever the control went in place, for about 6 weeks to 12 weeks, fantastic. They've got evidence. They're doing everything right. Around 6 to 12, and a little bit after 12 weeks, it starts sort of fading off. They're doing it every once in a while. And then the auditor, they get the email, the auditor's going to come back in, and then boom, right back up to compliant, right? And they're like, here, look how good we were the last 30 days. So how do we address that? Obviously, from a strategies and tactics perspective, we have to be thinking on a month and a year perspective, right? We can't just be like, I made relationships. A great example for you. A security program was launched, and the CISO was like, I don't understand what happened. I'm like, walk me through this. He's like, this was great. We got everyone together. We did a sticky note exercise. We did like trust falls. He didn't say trust falls, but it'll fit, right? Got into a really good relationship. We built our roadmap together. We had a RACI. The various stakeholders went like, I'm responsible for this, and I'm responsible for that. And yeah, you have my sword, right? It was one of those things. And they went out to the bar, and they had drinks, and then like the lights shone on, and they all fist bumped, and it was like the perfect ending of an 80s sitcom. And he's like, this is great. I'm like, that is fantastic. He goes, yeah. And then I launched the program, and no one's like, I don't remember that. I didn't sign up for that. Like, well, when did you have this great meeting? He's like, in January. It was awesome. That's when we had the budget. I said, well, when did you launch the program? He goes, in June. It's when we started work. I said, well, do you think they remembered even having, like the fist bump moment, did anyone remember that? He's like, I don't know, right? If we don't sustain these things, it doesn't happen. I ask oftentimes, like, all right, who are the key stakeholders for your successful project? Like, these 5 people. Do you have good relationships? Like, yes. When was the last time you met them? I think at a CAB meeting last quarter, that's not a good relationship, right? We need to be sustaining. We need to be making it personal. We need to be making it familiar. Well, the changes we make need to be built on changes we've already asked for. And we need to make sure that roadmap includes interjections at 6 and 12 weeks or whatever the right cadence is for the organization so it goes forward. We need to make sure that we're turning the personal into organizational when it comes to cybersecurity. All right. Let's talk about the gaps. One of the oldest security controls, hand washing. One of my favorite examples of this too. Stop the Black Plague, or at least in parts, right? Hand washing is a fantastic example. It's so easy to do as compared to like run all your developers through this secure pipeline. But when you ask people how often they wash their hands, consistently they lie. They say they wash them more often than they do. When you watch them, and they know you're watching, they find it creepy. Love science. But they also will wash their hands. Oh, he's watching. I'm going to wash my hands. Going to be good. And when you actually like don't watch, or when you watch them, they don't know, or when you do analysis, their behavior falls to the floor. So what do hospitals do? Awareness campaigns. We'll put up posters. Or if we catch you not washing your hands, we'll shame. Awareness campaigns don't move the needle at all for hand washing. And shame has actually been shown to reverse that, like people wash their hands less if you shame them in hospitals. By the way, kind of gross. I want my doctors to be clean. But if you think I'm just talking about hand washing, I would encourage you to think of like IAM. Because isn't this the exact same thing we do, right? Like, here's what we're going to do. Do you do it? Absolutely, I do it. Great. Can I follow you around and watch you do it? Yes, you can follow me and watch you do it. Awesome. Can I get some evidence that you did it? Sure. In the last 30 days, you mean? Or how about the control you just watched? And when it doesn't work, what do IAM programs do? We'll do an awareness campaign, or we'll have a leaderboard and show who the worst people are for access reviews. No, thank you. It doesn't work. So here's a thought. If this is the art of communication, not my quote, I'm going to argue this is the art of cybersecurity, is my quote. I think cybersecurity is not what we control. This is where we have gone wrong in frameworks. This is where we've gone wrong in training. This is where we've gone wrong with a cybersecurity man. It's not what we control. I would argue cybersecurity is what they do. What they do. Not awareness, not do they like us, although that helps, but it's what they actually do. So how do we actually get them to do things? In hand washing, as in security, it's all about baking it into the life cycle. Having a full life cycle where the controls are not slow down and think. Goodness gracious, system one, system two thinking. Not slow down and think. They just do it. Do you think that people during the Black Plague who were washing their hands knew anything about germ theory? No. They just knew they washed their hands. That's what they did, and then they lived. We don't need people to know all our risk scenarios and our controls. We just need them to do it, right? And so we need to have this consistent way of doing this. I recently ran into a startup, by the way, that does this for DevSecOps. And I just was like, you guys are amazing. They will show the full control lifecycle, checking out code, writing code, peer review, whatever your controls are, you can lay it out there, SAST, DAST, deployment. Frickin' phenomenal. And then they'll highlight where people have followed it and where people haven't. And that can allow you to have conversations. Either, wait a minute, this new team came on, they weren't aware of our process. We're going to give them some training. Not awareness training, deployment training. Right? Here's how you do your job. Or, hey, isn't it funny? Half the controls or half the projects keep skipping the SAST. I wonder why they're not doing static analysis. Maybe our controls are wrong. Maybe there's friction we need to address. And when people go off that happy path, maybe we add more friction there. If they're not following the process, it takes them longer, it's harder, there's signals, there's feedback to them that they're in the wrong area. I love this idea because so much of what we do in security is like manage exceptions. Like I want to run all the exceptions out, right? Like I want to highlight them and I want to run them into the ground. I want to have a program for managing them. Get rid of them. Freaking love exceptions. Exceptions are like sawdust, right? That gets made into plywood. Because exceptions are the feedback mechanism for where your controls are failing. And people aren't going to tell you. They probably won't know. Or if they do know, they don't want to tell you because they don't want to be burdened or yelled at. But it's such a good series of feedback. Also, leveraging what's in it for them. This is another great example, by the way, where you can tell a security leader from a practitioner. I was leading a conversation. I don't remember how many organizations, let's say 20. And we were talking about privileged access management. And I was like, how are you selling your PAM program? And half the room just looked at me like I was out of my mind. What do you mean selling it? I'm telling them to do it. There's a risk. We're controlling the risk. They don't have a choice. I've got a checklist. Cool. Talk to me in 3 years when it's not working. One person raised their hand and she was brilliant. She goes, well, here's the thing. Our current IT team, we went through some layoffs. They're always worried about getting blamed for things. So I had a conversation with them about, if we have these recordings, you're never going to get blamed because we have evidence of everything that was done. I went to my developers, and the type of PAM tool we're using, really clever by the way, which is beside the point, the type of PAM tool we're using relies on tags in the cloud and will automatically provision the developers into it. I'm like, hey, it's your last job. Didn't it suck when you joined any project and you had to wait 6 weeks before you got access? It's not going to happen here because with the PAM tool, you just get it. So basically, you just told them that their jobs are better. It's like, yeah. And so now I got buy-in and support. I'm like, that is exactly what we need to do, right? It's so hard for us to do because we think about the technology and we think about the thing. So hard for us to think about what is actually in it for the other users. So, mind the gaps. All right, let's give you some final thoughts. I'm going to give you a bonus cognitive bias. Bonus for you guys, the fundamental attribution error. So you guys hear about the fundamental attribution error? The basic idea is when you do things, you have all the information. You know why you did it. I was tired, I was late, boss called me, partner's grumpy at me, right? Whatever it was, you know why you did it. You're like, of course, but I'm a good person. But when they screw up, you're like, that idiot. Why did they do that, right? The fundamental attribution error. I would argue the cybersecurity man is the fundamental attribution error at scale. This is what our industry does. We don't necessarily connect the fact that people are just trying to be people, trying to do their jobs, trying to get things done, trying to achieve whatever they want to achieve. And really, I'm on a board, and the CFO of the board is, or CFO reports to the board is fantastic. Because she starts everything by saying, you don't want to know about accounting. I'm like, I don't. I got into IT because I didn't want to do accounting. She goes, good. Not going to bother you about that. Here's 3 things you do need to know right now that I need your input on. Love that. But we go like, everyone needs to know about security, right? We got to give them awareness training because they're making all these dumb decisions. No, fundamental attribution error. So, cognitive bias, something to think about. Another thing to think about is, all too often we don't build things for the way people work. My favorite example of this is our alarms. Every alarm is basically forced error or clanging, right? We're either hitting something or blowing something, historically. Something bad happens, ring the bell, blow the horn. Our phones now make those same noises. Our SOC now makes those same noises. It's kind of interesting. Like we just sort of carried on how we used to alert people to danger in the medieval times and carried it forward. But if you think about 20,000 years ago, is that how we knew danger was coming? No. It was more like our senses, what we smelled, what we heard. Years ago, I came across this great project, and I wish it was still around, called PEEP, the network oralizer. PEEP was amazing. What PEEP did was it made bird chirping noises based on network traffic. It created an entire sonic ecology based on what was going on in the network. And people who would use it would swear to me that they were like, oh, I got this great intuition, like, oh, the birds are upset. That must mean that we're printing too much, right? Back in the day and age where you really had to optimize your network. Imagine if we were doing that for our SOC, right? It would sound so much better walking into a SOC, the music, or maybe make it to techno or something, or make it exciting, but oh, it's thrilling music, Sort of like when you're watching a movie and the soundtrack shifts, you go, oh, this is going to be good. This is the good part. Same thought. We are hardwired to listen for changes in our environments and respond emotionally and physically. We forget that, and then we clang on things and we blow air. Similarly, I believe, not only from a security alert perspective, but from a risk perspective, from a communication perspective, we as risk management professionals are still banging sticks and blowing air. We've got to get to a point where we're much more in tune with people, much more designed with how people have evolved, and using more human-centric ways. So, how do you apply this? Here's a slide. You can read it. But just look for those ways where you guys are struggling, right? Relationships that are not working, projects that are failed, and ask yourself why, from a human perspective, right? Not because I don't get budget, not because they don't understand the technology, but is there a relationship problem failing? Is there a communication problem failing? Are they just not doing what they need to do because we haven't embedded in a workflow? Those are the areas that I would encourage you to look at. I don't have time for questions, and we all have to leave the room. You guys know this. This is the last day of RSA. But I will see you guys outside, and thank you so much for doing it.